So now it's over to you. We have a world, it's very clear from what you heard in these presentations, we have a world that's waking up to the fact that we can no longer treat land as an unlimited resource. We actually have to think about land comprehensively. We actually have to do the right thing in the right place at the right scale. We can no longer simply build the shopping mall where the municipality wants to build it, because maybe that's where the agriculture should be, or maybe that's where the forest should be. Because if we don't do that, we're finished. The trends that we heard about are basically indicating that that pace of change is accelerating. It's not, oh, we still have 25% of the globe to work with. It's gonna be gone before we know it. So it's over to you. You've got some of the best minds in the world right in front of you to let you know how can we go from assessment to response. And put it to you. Open it up for questions, please. Is there a second microphone that can be passed around?
My name is Chandra Vikash.
Pardon me, if you don't mind, just indicate your name and your organization and who you would like the question to go to.
Gaia, my question is to all the panelists. It's about, I'd like to point out the role of
Put the mic closer to your...
Metrics and memetics. You know, when countries are driven by GDP, when the memetics is about developing and developed, you know, which is also illogical and irrational. The terminology of developing points to nowhere. Where do we want to? We want to go over the cliff? So I think we need to redefine the notion of development. I mean, human progress cannot be about, you know, the human body doesn't grow infinitely. You're saying land is not infinitely growing. And land did not disappear. The earth has the same land mass, the same volume, the same surface area as it's been since billion years. So I think the notion of, again, you know, I'd like to reiterate what I said in the earlier session. The problem is not out there. The problem is right where the human habitat is. And we can just let rest of, you know, Chernobyl regenerated itself. The wolves came back.
Okay.
Maybe Fukushima would also come back. But the point is that can we just redefine the metrics and redefine the narrative of development? Thank you.
Would anybody like to respond to that? Joseph, you touched on what you were talking about.
I don't know if this is a response, but I think this goes back a little bit to the discussion we had in our breakout groups earlier today, and that is, in our particular group, we talked about the need for transparency and for trust, first of all. And so with Earth observations, as I just mentioned, there really are no secrets anymore. We can observe what's going on all over the world, and so maybe this will start to forge a realization that that we have to work in a transparent manner and think about the long-term effects of what we're doing. I don't know if that's enough to actually force a change in quote-unquote development, but at least I think you have an evidence-based start to assess, you know, what's going on, and hopefully, you know, as we say, as we joke in English, don't confuse me with the facts, my mind is made up. You know, maybe we can try to work beyond that with especially with Earth observations that show you, you know, the pictures don't lie, the imagery doesn't lie, it tells you what's happening.
I'll just quickly respond. You know, the nature-based solutions and the investment in natural infrastructure, which is, you know, forests and rivers and sustainably managed land. You know, one has to ask the question when there is a vision of a 5-year or 10-year economy, what role does nature-based solutions and ecological restoration linked to jobs and livelihoods play a role in that? And I think that is this realization, I think, is going to be fostered by the reports such as the Climate and Land and the IPBES I think we hope that there will be movement towards nature-based solutions as part of economic planning.
So a question over in the corner. We have another microphone over here.
Good afternoon. I have a question to Mr. Joseph Settele about biodiversity presentation. Can you explain better your statement, creating a new ecosystem? Do you understand to restore, recover degraded ecosystem, or by introducing new species, creating by zero ecosystem? Can you distinguish two typology of new ecosystem approach to increase biodiversity? Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, it's more about adjusting systems, or modifying systems, having new components, not necessarily invasive species or new species, but new combinations. For example, land use, agroforestry systems which haven't been there before, something like this. Could also be restoration activities, of course. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for wonderful presentations. It's such a wealth of knowledge. My name is Ekaterina Lengefeld. I am from Amrita University, India. And my question is for Fatima. Two questions. First question, you presented that indigenous local knowledge should be combined with the science. Can you please elaborate on that? How do you see that happening? And secondly, you presented a slide very nicely about Africa and the climate change and what the differences will make it on the change of the Celsius grace. What impact will it make? Do you have such data for other countries, or is it just for Africa? Thank you.
Okay, your first question about indigenous knowledge, yes, there are studies that have been done. Interestingly, it's about early warning systems and observations as well, where it's found that when you calibrate results from indigenous people and communities with Met-related knowledge, you get a stronger sort of probability in terms of agricultural production. So, for instance, rather than just focusing on the science Met-related data in terms of the knowledge that smallholder farmers would need about when to plant and how, etc., if you combine that with what indigenous communities have observed over a certain period, and you put the two findings together, you calibrate the two findings, then there is a stronger sense that, you know, the productivity of agriculture would increase. And this has been found, for instance, in northern Kenya, in a place called Turkana, where they were able to do that. And I think even as a result of that, the government decided that the knowledge of indigenous people should be preserved. And they set up a center that would at least make sure that that knowledge is not lost, because much of the knowledge is disappearing. So I think, yes, there are examples that you can do that. Your second question about the data on Africa in terms of climate change impacts. I think what we're seeing, especially in some of the hotspots, is that the more land is degraded, the more this is impacting on food security and also, I should say, nutritional security. And there are, you know, I don't have the data off the top of my head, but there is data definitely in the Sahel region that because this is an area that's already quite prone to desertification, that this is now affecting millions and millions of people in the Sahel region. The same is also in the Horn of Africa. And it's not just in terms of agriculture, but agriculture is the main one because that's where most people are in terms of livelihoods in Africa. But therefore, I think that we need to look at some of the areas where the impacts are going to be felt the most. But beyond that, I think we also need to look at some of the other mega trends. Africa is urbanizing, and it's urbanizing at a very fast rate. And that urbanization comes with problems in terms of energy, services. It comes with problems in terms of food security and food systems. And that population is going to grow as well. We have population growth also as a backdrop. So I think it's the biophysical and the social vulnerability issues that we need to look at. And if you bring those two things together, you'll definitely see that this is a region that's going to face a greater degree of hardship in terms of managing climate impact. So if the world doesn't get climate change right in terms of reversing some of the negative trends, the continent that is mostly going to suffer from that not getting it right is Africa. And I think that point has been made, but it needs to be made again and again, that Africa is going to suffer the most.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one very brief question. Last one, right there.
Thank you so much for the great presentations. My very quick question to Doug on the Knowledge Hub: is it going to be only addressing partially the land degradation component of the SDGs, or is it going to be covering other SDGs or other areas from the Earth system or subsystems? And by the way, I'm Hisham from Chapman University, California.
The short answer is it will be across a wide spectrum of applications using Earth observations to solve particular issues, such as across the SDGs where applicable. Not every single indicator needs Earth observations or can use them, but where it works, also for disaster risk reduction, for supporting the Paris Agreement, and then there's a number of other areas that will be covered, forest inventory, for example. So the short answer is it's a broad spectrum.
So we know. So we know. Okay, so it's a situation now where we know more than we ever have before. It's absolutely clear. We have assessment data that gives us every dimension of the problem we could possibly imagine. And if you've been listening to any of the plenary, you will know from interventions from countries that versions of what you hear up here are part of what's going on inside their countries to try and get the data, the information, to put themselves in the position to make the right decisions in order to move us forward for a more livable planet. It's interesting, the World Atlas for Desertification celebration, which was centered this year in Ankara, Turkey, they didn't use the word sustainability. They talked about livability. They actually emphasized with that word that we're kind of a little bit too late for sustainability, aren't we? We got to switch the message now to make sure people recognize that the whole set of solutions that are going forward are about our children being able to live on this planet. That's the bottom line. That's what we heard here. We got all the aspects of this. When you heard about risk and response, it's very clear that we have the information and the potential trajectories to do something about it, and it's very largely centered on land. The next section is about regenerating a livable planet, and I encourage you to stick around and work with Lindsay Stringer and her team and see where this goes for this Science Day. I thank you all very much, and I very much wish to thank. Yes, I very much wish to thank you.
What did he do? Did he say?
Stopped.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a coffee break until 3:30, and then we will reconvene and start with our last session, which again will be a very interactive session. So thank you for being back at 3:30. Thank you.